After the 2020 election, we saw an unprecedented amount of political violence. We saw what took place on January 6, 2021. The FBI has actually prosecuted more than 900 people who were involved on the attack on the U.S. Capitol on that particular day. And you still have Donald Trump and his MAGA followers still stating that it was just a walk in the park. They were just doing a tour of the U.S. Capitol. Well, a new poll commissioned by the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights found that 73% of voters across the country are worried about political violence happening again based upon the outcome of the vote on November 5th. Maya Wiley is president and CEO of the Leadership Conference. She's also the author of Remember, You Are a Wiley. She joins us right now. Maya, let's talk about these poll results in terms of what it shows, because we saw what happened. I was in Atlanta the day that actually happened. It was after Senator Warnock was elected in the runoff election in 2020, and I remember did a bunch of interviews and people were asking me, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And I said, well, chickens came home to roost. It was interesting. My publicist was upset. She's like, hey, you shouldn't say that. I'm like, no, I'm actually going to say it because it needs to be said. Many of us had been saying this was happening. But not only that, the FBI still has not found the individual who placed those pipe bombs outside of the Democratic National Committee office, and Vice President Kamala Harris was inside the building when that happened. And so this thing is real, and it is not dissipated.
That is correct, and voters not confused about this. I think what the poll shows, and it's the third year we've done this poll, but it was the first year that we realized we needed to ask this question about whether or not people were concerned about political violence. And our poll is one that covers all people. We sample for white and for Black and Latino, and we know that we are capturing a very big cross-section of this country. It's a national poll, and 73% is a very high number, and it's not surprising, both because of your very important points, Roland, what people have seen in the news. But it's also, that we've seen the rise of hate. We've seen how people respond to rhetoric from politicians and other powerful people who seek to divide us, who can sometimes stoke that kind of violence. And so I think the fact that people are knowledgeable, are paying attention, should be no surprise to us. But I also want to make sure people know that there's good news in this poll. Very good news. I mean, for one thing, our poll has found year over year over year for the past 3 years that democracy is a top issue, that people are very concerned about their freedoms. I would say we could summarize it as people know democracy is on the ballot. But equally importantly, if not more importantly, that we have seen record high numbers of motivation to vote. 93% of the respondents in this poll said that they were highly motivated to vote. And it won't surprise your audience that Black women are off the charts. And that's not unusual. Black people, but motivation for Black women is at 60%. That's extremely high, and it's higher than any other group. And as we know, that's going to be critical when we talk about the other issues that are showing up in this poll that people care deeply about. Their disapproval of the Supreme Court, their interests in having the health care that abortion provides. Nobody wants to see another Black woman die because they can't get emergency medical treatment when they're pregnant. But it's also about, all of the freedoms that we enjoy, people caring about affordable health care. And all of these issues are very much clear, front, center, and present for the people we survey.
Well, we do have to deal with the reality of whiteness. First of all, 70% of the electorate in 2020 were white voters. Your poll shows that how worried are folks about white supremacy on the increase. 52% say they are more worried. 47% said less worried. Very worried was 29%. Somewhat worried was 22%. Then you went to the question of white nationalism. Total more worried, 50%. Total less worried, 44%. Control room, y'all should be showing the graphics. Why are we so slow with the graphics? Thank you very much. Some would word 18%, not so word 15%. I mean, that is real. And when you start looking at the rhetoric being used, when you start looking at what is being stated, and I've said this to several political folks on social media when they were talking about why Vice President Kamala Harris isn't doing so well when it comes to union workers. I said, why are y'all leaving out the white part of union workers? We have to recognize in places like this state, Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, we have folks who are actually voting against their pocketbooks and voting for white culture. A lot of this also plays into it in terms of what we are seeing into the political violence with the rhetoric that we're actually seeing. And so I just think that a lot of folks in media and in the political world are not, they just refuse to deal with the reality of whiteness in these conversations. They want to sort of just leave it off to the side as if it doesn't exist.
We have a significant problem with white supremacy and white ethno-nationalism in this country. You can see it in the hate crimes data. You can see it in Project 2025. You can see it, to your point, Roland, in so many different spaces. And yes, we see a very sharp political divide, ideological divide. The one thing that is really good news in this poll, and I will also say, just from personal experience and with a lot of unions who are members of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights and also helped found the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. I was really so gratified to be walking with white union workers from the automobile, from United Auto Workers, when we were in Chicago in August, and really active and all in workers from Belvedere. We know that there's a strike pending there. So, the one good thing to know is, no community is a monolith, and that is important. And we have some good allyship on the issues of democracy and freedom and racial justice and a right to work and support a family. But I think you're also right that you can see in the numbers exactly what you're talking about, Roland. But it's also very gratifying to see how women in general across race, women who are white women who lean liberal, and even the softening in what would be the moderate category, right? The people who would not self-identify as conservative or liberal, who are less susceptible, who are more swayable, I would say, on really critical issues. So just for example, we heard and saw the hateful lies about the Haitian community in Springfield. We know what that was. That was hate. That was racism. That was explicit. And that had real consequences to people's safety. And look, the narrative and the rhetoric we're hearing from politicians who want to divide us along racial lines, who want to signal to white supremacy and to white nationalism, exactly those things are often saying the quiet part out loud. But what they're also doing is trying to use immigration as a wedge. They are trying to say that we should fear immigrants, that folks who come to this country and work and pay taxes somehow do not deserve the respect and treatment that we know we all deserve as human beings. And when you look at moderates, for example, if you look at conservatives, people who self-identify as conservative, heavily white, you're going to see their top issue is immigration and the economy. But if you ask moderates, immigration comes up as 20%. That's a significantly lower number. And what it tells us is we really do have the opportunity to speak to the issues that people care about. And when they hear politicians are trying to divide us, they do not like it. It does not serve any of us. And that is also equally true on racial justice issues, which also polled fairly high on this poll. So I would just say, when we think about the coalition of the willing, the coalition that is a pro-democracy coalition, that's Black people, that's us showing up, that's us using our voice. It's recognizing that immigrants are all of us. It's also recognizing that the hate and the division of white supremacy and white ethno-nationalism cannot win when we have this coalition. And that includes our white brothers and sisters who know it's wrong.
Ma Wiley, we surely appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
You, Roland, as always.
100 Republicans who worked in national security for Presidents Reagan, both Bushes, and for President Trump, now endorsing Harris for president.
She came up as a prosecutor, an attorney general, into the Senate. She has the kind of character that's going to be necessary in the presidency.
Vice President Harris is standing in the breach at a critical moment in our nation's history. We have a shared commitment as Americans to do what's right for this country. This year, I am proudly casting my vote for Vice President Kamala Harris.
Former generals, secretaries of defense, secretaries of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, CIA directors, and National Security Council leaders under Democratic and Republican presidents, Republican members of Congress, and even former Trump administration officials agree there's only one candidate fit to lead our nation, and that's Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.